Hey everybody. Microsoft is a plague on the games industry that just keeps getting worse and worse. It didn't start that way, but over time their decisions have made them become the thing that they opposed in the gaming market. See, Microsoft would like you to forget this, but once upon a time, and really not even that long ago, they had specified commitments to making gaming better through their ecosystem. Through things such as supporting worthy studios, big and small, and creating the very best games they possibly could with the help of their resources, keeping gaming accessible to as many people as possible through fair pricing, and a Game Pass that was once upon a time an actually good deal. And of course, game preservation efforts. Xbox may have started in the wrong foot in the previous console generation, but then eventually they did get their priorities straight. However, these have all been completely broken by now, and the more they do, the more they defile those promises. A while back, Microsoft began making a bunch of acquisitions. Many small but known studios with great potential got bought out to bolster Xbox's brand as a response to PlayStation's dominance during the last console generation, in big part thanks to the exclusive games. This then of course devolved into making major purchases in the billions of dollars, such as Bethesda for $7 billion, and then the biggest waste of money, Activision for $68.7 billion. A decision so bad that it completely flipped them upside down. It is from this decision that many of their bad financial decisions came from, like hiking up game prices and turning the Game Pass from a good thing to an overpriced subscription scam. But today, we're going to be focusing on bad decisions made from ideological standpoints. Because the financial stuff everyone talks about. Every game journalist has no qualms constantly hammering Xbox over game prices or over studio shutdowns or layoffs, or their recent demand that each studio will have to comply with a 30% profit margin on each released game. It's the other stuff, the uncomfortable stuff, that people don't dare to touch. Not even big content creators here on YouTube, because it's a one-way ticket to getting themselves blacklisted by Xbox, not getting those lovely early access to game previews or just early review copies, and potentially even their own sponsors just for speaking out or covering uncomfortable or taboo topics. So without any such limitations, let's just get into this. If you find yourselves enjoying the video along the way, just give it a like in order to help with the algorithm. Let's jump in. So real talk, Microsoft had a golden goose in their hands at the turn of the last console generation. They had a bunch of money, they had some solid studio acquisitions, they had a strong base of backwards compatibility, something that is sorely missing in the console space, and on top of just accessing, they were also working on unlocking frame rate and increasing visual fidelity on those older games through things like FPS boost and HDR boost. And they also had a fairly priced subscription service packed with games for any newcomers. And yet they've lost it all in just a few short years. There's various reasons for this. Like I said previously, the financial side is no joke. But there is this one big thing that people tend to avoid talking about, which is their commitment to putting politics and ideology ahead of their commitment to just producing the games their loyal customer base expected. This isn't just some small little thing that you do on the side. This is something that they placed ahead of everything else. And therein lies the problem. Because then, obviously, that also affects the financial side of things. After all, if you make games that people don't want to play, they're not going to want to buy your games. And even with Xbox's current pivot trying to go into more of a publisher thing rather than being a console, it's still not going to work. The problem's still going to be there. Again, if people don't want your games, people don't want your games. Now, of course, it's not that it started this way, of course not. Most of the time, things start slow and progress in small increments. Stuff that you don't even notice, and that's not even worth getting mad at sometimes, because not everything is an agenda. So, of course, there are valid misinterpretations out there that people could argue do not apply to certain games. But by 2024, they were already so far gone that they exposed their own agenda openly. There's other examples I could draw from over time, but for me, this list is the old faithful. Because it wasn't even leaked, it was posted by them. They're so far gone, so lost in their own little worlds and echo chambers, that they thought that posting this to virtue signal specifically against Stellar Blade in 2024 was going to be like a good promotional move for them. posting a list packed with ideologically driven motivations, things that aim to control what dialogues the studios write, what types of characters they design, what types of backgrounds and roles those characters should have or are allowed to have in some cases, the types of worlds they create and stories they tell, etc. All of it through heavy-handed gender and race-based limitations hyper-fixated on political correctness and modern ideological standards. It's the type of stuff I often get into arguments with people who like to come into my comment sections and get mad at me for telling them the truth, just showing them this kind of thing. Pretending like no such agendas exist in gaming at all, and I'm just a grifter whose channel is going to die out in 2 months. I've been hearing this shit since I had 380 subscribers and posted my first video on Veilguard back in September of 2024. And I'll probably keep hearing it going forward because some people really just don't want to listen or be reasonable. I just wish that they would acknowledge the reality, and then if they wanted to defend those points, like if they want to take the list and go down each little point and defend why they think it makes games better, then fine, let's go ahead and have that debate. But nah, with lots of people you can't even get to that level, they can't even get past the first threshold of admitting what's in front of their goddamn eyes. Ever since then, there have been plenty more examples of Microsoft/Xbox making stupid ideologically driven decisions that undoubtedly damage their brand and their games, and we're going to get to some of them later in the video. The reason why I often return to this list though is because it's all-encompassing. It's ideologically tainted creative restrictions for all the studios working under their big umbrella, studios that have been getting absolutely crushed, in part because of it and in part because of other industry-wide issues that are born of incompetence. It's just that even that incompetence can, in many cases, be tracked back to these ideological problems, and in other cases, it's very difficult to criticize them either way. Like if you look at one of their video games and you want to criticize the writing, if you think that someone should be fired because their work was terrible, everything is just going to circle back to this again. Because inevitably there's going to be black characters or gay characters or whatever, and so even if you are criticizing points that have nothing to do with that, points that have to do with the game being bad, you're still going to get hit with articles and narratives like this, trying to turn it into an ideological issue. Because of course, if you're writing stories or designing characters that are limited by these ideological rules like on that list, they're going to want to protect that, plus the writers and designers that did it, despite them clearly being a problem hindering the studio from turning a profit. But in their mind, it's like, nah, they're not the problem, you are for not wanting to buy a game that doesn't appeal to you. And this is unacceptable in any business. If you go to a restaurant and the food is shit, the food is shit. You want to make money, you gotta turn that thing around, otherwise what are you gonna do? You're gonna gaslight people into eating shit?
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
It's not gonna happen, you're gonna go bankrupt. I'll give you another example later where ideologically driven decisions undeniably impact the company's growth, but first, just look at this quote from a recent Bloomberg article. Again, it's an example of how game journalists will admit financial issues and pressure Microsoft over it, but just never really address or tackle ideological faults. Quote, "Something in the games industry needs to change. Expenses are swelling, growth is stalling, and almost every game maker is facing questions about how to survive. Tens of thousands of workers have lost their jobs since 2023, including thousands at Xbox, which has been closing studios and canceling projects at a rapid clip." And then there was also this graph showing Xbox's sharp revenue decline. To journalists like Jason Schreier, who wrote this article, this is all just because of the Activision acquisition and because of greed, such as expecting the aforementioned 30% profit margin from Xbox's main first-party releases. He will never acknowledge nor touch the ideological issues. In fact, he has gone on record before defending that ideologically driven decisions in this business are not a problem. Yeah, sure, and my name is John Veilguard. While I do acknowledge the acquisition of Activision to have been incredibly stupid and a marking point where Xbox gave into their desperation and threw all of their previous values out the window, values that were pro-consumer, it's simply not the only problem. If their games were appealing and selling successfully, they would still have an issue with the acquisition, hanging overhead, above them like a menacing shadow, but at least they'd be holding themselves well. The main problem is their games are not working out at all. Not all of them fail for the same reasons, of course. For example, Redfall was just a broken mess, though to be honest, it was also much less appealing than the studio's previous releases, such as Dishonored, Prey, and Deathloop. But to look at the current state of Xbox, to look at the current state of their main franchises like Gears, Halo, and Fable, and look at some of the new games that they have released ever since, these new IPs that they work on, or games that they're trying to bring back, like they were trying to bring back Perfect Dark, and that ended up in the trash as well, and deny that their shift from being player first to being ideology first doesn't factor in significantly is goddamn crazy. Let's get on to another part of this. I don't like using the word woke in my videos because its use has become so generalized and ridiculous that it kinda lost its meaning, or it's gotten so convoluted with various people using various meanings that its meaning is lost, often making it sort of feel like a weak point where anyone will hear that word and be like, oh okay, I guess I don't have to listen to this video anymore because it's one of those people, whatever type of person that they saw using the word before in whatever way that they didn't like. But sometimes using it does help to sum up various terms that people usually refer to when they bring it up. And this is a great case for it because wokeness doesn't just mean shoving in a gay character or blackwashing a previously white or Asian character. Wokeness also applies to this utter feminization of gaming, which is another agenda in and of itself, where bodies like the ESA release data like this to make it look like there's as many women playing video games as there are men. Also, just a funny little side note, look at the percentage of non-binary. There's 1%. There's some studios out there killing their franchises off to appeal to 1% of the global gaming demographic. That's absolutely brilliant. But anyway, back to the data. Shit like this is manipulated by games media and companies like Microsoft to pass along this image that gaming truly is equally shared by men and women, and so in general the industry must reflect that by making more decisions for major franchises that appeal to women rather than men. So basically, if you're creating a new IP, you need to keep this in mind. You need to make things a little bit more feminized instead of all that, masculinity like we used to have in the games in the past. And if you're bringing back games from the past, older franchises, you need to find ways to feminize them as well, because hey, look at all this potential new female audience that exists out here. The problem is that the data is bullshit. It doesn't apply to Microsoft. In another slide, it shows that the #1 preferred platform for gamers is mobile. And we all know that that's bullshit. Remember Diablo Immortals?
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
Remember the outrage there? But that was a long time ago. Things have evolved. No, they haven't. Remember Horizon Steel Frontiers? That's a much recent example, and people are still equally wondering why the fuck is a Horizon franchise game releasing on mobile only instead of PlayStation 5 and PC. Like, let's stop kidding ourselves. The majority of actual gamers, as it pertains to the actual games industry, which Xbox is part of alongside PlayStation, Steam, and to an extent even Nintendo, as well as all of these other companies that look at this data and use it like EA, Ubisoft, etc., do not play on mobile. They play on consoles and PC, and that just serves to show that this data is generalized and takes into account all of the bored mothers out there who have like Candy Crush installed on their tablets or something, or all the grandparents out there who have games installed on their phones because their grandkids installed them there. This is data that has nothing to do with them, but companies like Xbox, Sony, EA, Ubisoft, so on and so forth, plus the games media will take this shit and use it to justify the utter feminization of the games industry that we've been going through. Something they do out in the open too is announcements like these talking about either achieving more gender diversity in the workplace or setting targets to increase it in the next fiscal years. Or running programs like Ubisoft and CD Projekt Red where they offer to teach and get young up-and-comers into game development, but only if they're women or non-binary. The men, fuck them, they get cut out. Too many men in the industry. Apparently, if you're a guy and you just want to get into game development because you love games, you get nothing. You get treated like shit and discarded. And this is yet another thing that needs to stop. Why are we forcing this? If there's more men interested in gaming and game development, let it be a goddamn male-dominated space. Fuck's the problem? There's more women in nursing, caretaking, schooling, cosmetic areas, social services, tourism, therapists, administration, lab technicians, etc. What's the problem with it too? We're gonna go into those areas and force them to be more masculine with gender-based hiring quotas to exclude women and hire men instead? So we can have more dudes equally represented in this shit?
With all due respect, what the fuck are you talking about?
Why are we putting up with forceful crap like this? And in an industry where men are actually the majority of the demographic, that's actually the majority that is being neglected both when it comes to employment and promotions in the studios, but also when it comes to the visuals, the themes, the stories, and the presentation of the games being made. And yes, 100% no doubt in my mind that when it comes to the big AAA games in major franchises owned by these big companies in gaming, men are 100% the majority. There's no doubt in my mind about this. It doesn't mean no girls allowed. Anyone is allowed to like the same stuff that we like. Like you're a woman and you enjoy Assassin's Creed, Witcher, Halo, Metal Gear, Doom, Resident Evil, etc. Welcome aboard. Have fun. However, if you're a girl or a soy boy who doesn't like a certain franchise and you want to change it and turn it into something that it is not, just so that it fits you, then get the fuck out and don't come back. It's that simple. If I don't like vegan food, I'm not going into a vegan restaurant and tell them to cook me steak. So again, back to the thing, wokeness doesn't just mean you shove in a character like Tosh into a game like Dragon Age. It also applies, and very strongly, to the feminization of gaming that has been going on for years now. I don't even like the word feminization that much either, because honestly, when it comes to femininity, they don't like it either. I mean, that's why Xbox crashed out and posted that list in response to Eve's design from Stellar Blade. They find actual femininity to be offensive and play into the male gaze. They would rather create female characters that are ugly or ambiguous, whose bodies are featureless and curveless, just like that point on the right-hand side of that list. What normal people call feminine features, Xbox calls exaggerated proportions. I much prefer the word pussification for what's been going on in the games industry, where we lost so much of the edge, attitude, and themes that used to be so damn present and engaging like 10-15 years ago. I recently played through Batman Arkham Origins, for example. It was made by a different team than Rocksteady at the time, and since they were doing an origin story, they made the Batman even more aggressive than in the other Arkham games. Modern Rocksteady could never even come close to that shit. Now all they're capable of is Soy Squad. This is a general problem hitting a lot of studios and companies in AAA now, and it's a big deal because it has been causing a massive disconnect with their own audiences. And as if that wasn't enough, since all they're doing is the same kind of stories, the same kind of cucked dialogues, the same kinds of weak storytelling, the same kinds of progressive coded and often ugly character designs, they are all together also contributing towards this massive issue, which is this fatigue. It's a difficult fatigue to pin down. Like, it's not easy to say what exactly it is a fatigue of. It's just that anytime you see a new trailer, you can immediately spot it. Kind of like watching the recent trailer for Horizon Hunter's Gathering. You look at those character designs, you look at that art style, you look at that gigantic ass bloated character that looks more like a ball. Like, holy crap, fellas, she's fatter than Ellie from Borderlands. It should actually be an achievement to be able to create a character that looks fatter than that, but there you go. Sony did it with this new Horizon game. And so you just see these things, and it just hits that feeling, that fatigue that you already know why it's there. You already know why it was put there. You already know what the people will say in its defense. You already know the attacks that you'll be getting hit with if you, just as a goddamn common sense gamer, have the gall to complain about it, to say that you don't like it, to say that it doesn't appeal to you, even even though sometimes you say that and they actually retort with, not everything is for you, but then they'll complain about you anyway when you choose not to play it. Like the games fail and it's like, the gamers didn't show up for this one either, the bigots. Which is so confusing too, because it's like, if you're actively making games that are not supposed to be for us, for our kind of audience, then why are you complaining when we don't show up to play them? These lobotomites are so hyperfixated on marginalizing themselves on a day-to-day basis that they don't even notice that they've become the central demographic that these big companies are designing and writing their content for. They're making their games so soft, they're rounding their edges so much, literally just to cater to these kinds of people, as their studios all catch on fire and go through tens of thousands of layoffs, restructuring, shutdowns, project cancellations, etc., and we still have to hear that we are the problem. So just as a short recap, mostly for my sake as I wade through all of this annoying crap without trying to lose track of the point of the video and without breaking out into an unstructured rant, talking about Xbox and Microsoft's failures without bringing up this total disconnect is disingenuous. And the reason why I call it ideological is because it has these obvious ideological roots. If I was making videos 10 years ago, I'd be talking about a totally different disconnect taking over gaming, which was all the companies chasing the elusive live service dream. So many companies chasing the success of games like Overwatch or GTA Online, wanting to have their own, to the point of even taking known IPs such as Dragon Age and Fallout and turning their sequels into live services. It was obviously not what the fan bases wanted, but they were forcing it on us anyway, hoping that it would stick. Same kind of thing that's happening now, except now it's unequivocally political in nature. And now here's the example that I said I was going to give you guys earlier, that also serves to show that wokeness and the consequences of it isn't just, again, a random gay or black or whatever character with preachy dialogues and settings that they don't make sense in. Wokeness is also seeing how very clearly cooked you are, financially speaking, and still going out of your way to place money on shit that makes no sense and serves no purpose whatsoever other than pushing an agenda. That's what happens every time companies like Microsoft choose to hire those types of consultants like Sweet Baby Inc. It doesn't take a 900 IQ genius to realize how bad the content is. So anytime these companies keep hiring them, it's obviously not for narrative purposes, it's for agenda purposes. And there's also what happened last year with that game about crossing the border. Take Us North, which was presented at Gamescom of 2025. And by presented, I mean the lead developer stood on stage for the entire duration of the presentation, spewing propaganda through a PowerPoint slideshow without even showing any gameplay.
So I got a little intro. Thank you. My name's Carla Reyes. My pronouns are she, her. And yeah, I run a little indie studio called Anima Interactive. We're developing Take Us North, which is about migration across the US-Mexico border, which is obviously a very relevant and heavy-hitting topic. But that's why we found it important to talk about. Because it's very deeply rooted in research. Given how sensitive and complex and nuanced the subject matter is, we want to make sure that we are telling these stories authentically, and that we are, reaching our goal in trying to shift hearts and minds around this. So before I begin, I'm actually curious to ask all of you, because I'm mindful there might not be many Americans in the room. Are there any Americans, by the way?
Hey, Bobby, look, I'm American. I think I'll use my credit card.
Could I ask, what are your perceptions around the motivations behind migration across the US-Mexico border? What are you hearing in the headlines in the news? What do you think is the primary motivation for people from Latin America or otherwise crossing the US-Mexico border?
Who cares?
In the US, one of the narratives that's being pushed is obviously, you've probably heard this, Americans, or they'll often say Latin Americans, or they'll be reductive to Mexicans. They will say they're just stealing our jobs, right?
Shut the fuck up. Let me die in peace.
Part of what we're trying to do is challenge this misinformation, right? So
misinformation.
Let me just quickly show a couple of videos here. So we've done voice of the people style interviews to ask people about their understanding about migration across U.S.-Mexico border.
What the fuck am I doing here? And like, who are these people?
Public opinion on why people migrate to
U.S. Oh, hold on. I want to make sure this audio works.
This is a video game?
Goal with Take Us North is really to try to humanize migrant stories and capture some of the complexity and nuance. Basically, in the game, you play the role of a migrant guide or a guia, often known as coyotes. Coyotes are often associated with the drug trade. People met carteles before, but it's more complicated than that. And
it is more complicated. It's worse. We're collaborating with Undocumented Filmmakers Collective. Oh my God.
Devine, who has done extensive research both in Latin America and along the border. He published a book last year called Soldiers and Kings, which is all about smuggling across the Mexican border. And we've been working with this team. And there's also a collection in the US. So these are people who are artists and storytellers in their own right, but they actually also have experience of having crossed the border. So here you can kind of just see, like, side by side, a lot of the context that we're trying to
one second, time.
Look. And it's primarily set
okay, can you swear here? Can you swear? Okay. Fuck you! I'm telling you! This is bullshit!
Nature, and they're trying to keep...
Because there's a lot of misinformation on both sides, actually, right? Like, one of the things, too, that I think is not captured very well is that migrants from all over the world are actually traveling to Latin America in an attempt to make the journey to the US. You see people from Southeast Asia, from Africa. It's not just Mexicans and it's not just Latin Americans, right? And I think this is something that also not that many people are aware of.
This is a game that is also partially backed by Microsoft, and to call it a game is frankly a stretch. Because honestly, it's more like that shit that we just saw from the UK government, Pathways. I didn't cover it on my channel, but I'm sure you guys have heard it by now. Especially Amelia. You definitely have heard of Amelia by now. A symbol of the utter failure that was that piece of government-backed propaganda in game form to appeal to kids. To indoctrinate them, to force them this compliance where, in the game, for example, one of the instances where you get to pick a choice is you get a video from a group chat or whatever, and you can either look into the matter that the video is about to investigate further for yourself, find out if it's the truth or not, in other words, exercise critical thinking, and this option is branded as negative. You'd think that this was a game made by China or North Korea for their own people, but nope. It was by the UK government for our very own neighbors right here in Europe. Take Us North for me is more in line with that than being an actual game, because if it was, we would have seen the game instead of getting a woman on stage delivering disinformation about border enforcement, cartels, trafficking, and other very fun things. Basically, they're presenting this as a real thing, not as fiction, and the real things are actually shrouded in lies and misrepresentations of the actual facts. Now, why would a company like Microsoft, that has been losing money hand over fist, at least in the Xbox division, go and tie themselves up with this shit if not for being undeniably captured by far-left agendas? Why are they investing resources into shit like this instead of making something good or investing into smaller independent studios or developers that could turn a small investment into a big payout? Like, again, we can beat around the bush all that we want, we can cope, we can save, all that we want about these definitions. We can try to hyperfixate on financials and pretend like neither of these problems are here as well, but it doesn't matter. Because they are. Even if content creators like these anti-woke exposer channels or these game journalists want to solely focus on financials, they are going to have to end up right back here again, because ideological influences are directly affecting their financials too. You can bring up Activision deal as a massive kick in the nuts for Xbox, and you will be right, but it doesn't explain utter wastes of resources like these, nor does it explain why the other games are failing to appeal to their audiences. But there's its hate campaigns. No, it's not. Make a good game, get glazed. Anyone who claims gamers just complain these days doesn't have a fucking clue of what they're talking about and are clearly not watching game reveal shows like the ones at the Game Awards and others, where no shortage of people, even people with channels who criticize all of this agenda crap, are praising captivating ideas and getting excited for games that look genuinely good. These soy boys and journos are just mad that they're not glazing the slop that companies like Microsoft are churning out, made by delusionally retarded activists activists for equally delusional, out-of-touch morons in the modern audience who keep failing to show up. Plus, look at what just happened with games like Knight's Path or Lords of the Fallen 2, where game journalists are attacking these games for wanting to create female characters that aren't compromised visually by an agenda that hates women. You see, the truth is, fellas, that if you really had a blatantly honest conversation with a lot of these people, they would express feelings like this one right here. Explicit hatred for us and a desire to take away what we already had and enjoyed. Hell, here's another quote from a Sweet Baby Inc. Andy expressing a desire to burn the industry to the ground. Now, I know not everyone thinks like this, but there's still way too many people like this, activists, that have their doors open in the games industry. And it foments this kind of hostility that we often see and that even I can fall victim to sometimes. By which I mean victim of engaging in it. I don't mean hostile comments being made against me, like that's just the norm at this point. It's just that I like to hold myself to a higher standard and sometimes I can't. Because it's obviously inherently frustrating to see people that actively want to make the wrong decisions for beloved franchises and with the money invested into them by big publishers like Xbox, Sony, etc., still be sought out and hired regardless of making that public. Like really, what is this? Only in the backwards world do you go out and hire someone who wants to break your games or fuck with your success deliberately, no matter what their reasons are. It doesn't even matter if they LARP as if it's a good cause, because it's just not. It's actually destructive. And we'll be exploring this part in the last topic in the next timestamp. This is what their actual desires are, not inclusion or diversity. What are you, fucking stupid? Their true desires is to bend whatever it is that they can to their standards and break whatever it is that they cannot bend in the first place. What they fail to calculate though, at least the companies hiring these activists, is that the modern audience to whom they make these games for now is so incredibly small that it cannot hold these multi-million-dollar franchises on its own. So they still need our purchases to stay afloat. But now, and this is my take, right? I don't know whether this is 100% true or not, it's just my estimation based off of what I've been noticing. The thing is that now, they are so far gone internally after years of molding their studios to be this pussified versions of themselves that value social causes and social impact, virtue signaling, etc. more than actually making a good game that appeals to their fan bases, that calls back to the origins of these franchises that they have, or their own brand names, that they can't even fix it anymore. Like, they're stuck. Their very identities that they used to have are gone, and now they formed whole new ones. It kinda takes us back to, for example, when new games market themselves with those announcement trailers saying, "From the studio that brought you this really cool old game 15 years ago," while marketing something that isn't even close to that. Recent example from my previous video is Obsidian, and even my own commenters don't like how I bring up that I was a fan of theirs, because but it's not really Obsidian anymore. Most of the old guard is gone, and whatever is left doesn't carry the same values. And yeah, that's true. That's exactly it. That's why by now it's so difficult to fix these issues. The soft slop has become part of their new identities. Another recent example that is really funny is that thing going on with Warcraft, where one of the people in charge is wishing that they hadn't called it Warcraft. Like, you know how fucked up you have to be internally that you even wish that you could change the name of your franchise? Because you got so far away from the core of it that it can't even be called that anymore? Brother, at this point, just start a new franchise and stop corrupting existing IPs. But you see, they can't do that, fellas. They can't do that because they need the old famous name to sell the new garbage. They need to take that thing that used to represent everything you loved and fuck with it. Remember this mini crash out too when the news came out that EA was purchased by Saudi Arabia? We had this ex-BioWare writer, one of the ones who worked on Veilguard and got fired, crashing out that the studio will now have to be shut down because apparently it's impossible for them to make a game without LGBTQ+ ideology into it. Since when has BioWare become this? Like shit, sure, BioWare has always had optional gay romances that players could pick, but that's it. It was just an option on the side, no virtue signaling, no lectures, no preaching, no crappy character designs. Since when has BioWare become so tied to LGBTQ+ agendas that it can't even exist anymore if a new boss pops in and simply tells them to make a fun, simple video game? Well, this is the reason why I believe this is. Too much softness, too many cooks in the kitchen, too much HR bullshit, too many little separate departments tied to ethics, diversity, sensitive consultation, social impact, etc. Too much garbage polluting the waters. I often feel sorry for normal developers who probably grew up dreaming of working on making the same types of great video games that they fell in love with, and they're now stuck in these environments having to either conform to it or quit and start their own studios to make their own independent games, like the people from Expedition 33, Defect, Moon Studio, the fellas making Samson, and some of the other games that I mentioned in another video recently. I feel sorry for the situations that they are in and sorry that there's no seemingly easy solution that doesn't require massive restructuring. In a way, it's easier to do what Tencent did with Ubisoft, for example, where it didn't even just come in like, hey guys, we own 25% of your company now, so yeah, let's get to work. They created a new subsidiary called Advantage Studios to handle the main franchises. And even then, I'm not sure it's going to be enough to get the Ubisoft rot out of the way. When it comes to Microsoft and the stuff they shoved themselves into, there is an insane amount of rot to speak of. In the next episode of this shit show, we're gonna be talking about another major component of it, which is this thing you guys have probably seen already floating around online about Minecraft. The whole Good Trouble campaign, where Microsoft straight up pumps propaganda straight into a kid's game. This ought to be fun, but anyway, in order to not overload anyone with a humongous video, that's gonna be left for a part 2 that continues off of this but focuses mainly on that alone, because it's actually going to be just as big as this video alone or even bigger. I already have it set up, it's looking pretty big. It's gonna be coming out very soon after this, so stay tuned. I'll also link it in the description and top comment of this video as soon as it's out to make it easier for anyone watching in the future. With that said, thank you all very much for hanging out with me today. Let me know your thoughts below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for future sauce. I'll see you very soon on the next part. Until then, take care of yourselves.